Well, g'day everyone. So a few weeks ago, I did a quick review on a 2025 Kawasaki Z900SE. Now, I've become a big fan of inline fours on the street over the last few years, mainly because I find the smoothness of a inline four just to be really nice on the street. I tend to avoid angry bikes on the street these days. I like to save the angriness for the track. And maybe it's because I'm getting old and soft, I don't know, but there's just something about that inline four that I like. During that video, I drew some comparisons to the Yamaha MT-09SP and also the Street Triple, which I've owned. But I've only ever ridden the Yamaha MT-09SP on the track, never on the street. And it struck me that I probably should take it out for a ride and give you my thoughts on how I like it. And a few of you had asked me to do that also. Here's the thing that is interesting about this bike is on paper, the specs are fantastic. You would argue that if you just looked at the specs, which you can all do and I've shown in previous videos, natural decision would be to go for that Yamaha. But let's face it, motorcycles are not that simple. If they were, decisions would be so much easier. But when it comes to this particular bike, let's face it, well, to me it has a face that only a mother could love. There are elements of it that you look at and think, oh, it's okay. But when you look at it from different angles, the front especially, some elements of the underbelly just look, for me anyway, and art is a subjective thing and it is in the eye of the beholder. This Yamaha is a bike that when you get off it and you walk away and you look at it, is your heart gonna go like this or is your heart gonna sink? Now, my experience riding it on the track, wow, great bike, great brakes, great engine, plenty of horsepower, just a really good vibe, nice riding position. But if I was to ride it every day as a daily rider, would I get off it when I park outside their cafe, my coffee, and look at it and go, oh, it's a beautiful bike? Would I be thinking, oh, that bike rides awesome? But hey, I don't know about looking at it. Now, for me, the Kawasaki looks awesome. I really love how brash it looks. I like that green trellis frame. I like the angriness of the beak on it, the way the seating position makes me feel. I thought it would only be fair for me to take the Yamaha MT-09SP out for a ride and just see how it makes me feel beyond the engine, which I know is fantastic. So let's go out for a ride. And this is the 2025 Yamaha MT-09SP. So today, it's my opportunity to ride it on the street to try and give it a real comparison to the Z900SE, which some of you would like to see. I've had a few notes from you, so keep those notes coming. So, this is the 2025 Yamaha MT-09SP. And as I said earlier, today's all about what it feels like on real streets, everyday riding, compared to the Z900SE. I already know what this bike can do on the track, but out here in the real world, it's a whole different kind of test. Now, this is not supposed to be an exhaustive test over a 5-hour video. It's really just a follow-up to some of the requests I've had from a few of you after my last Z900 video. What I'd say, first of all, is that if you can hear the engine here right off the bat, the throttle response, Yamaha's ride-by-wire setup is very sharp. Honestly, maybe too sharp for some riders. Even in street mode, it's definitely twitchier, first impressions, than the Z900. That bike's throttle is smoother, more progressive. Not slow, just more forgiving. Especially helpful in city traffic or mid-corner corrections in that type of environment. Okay, so what about the suspension feel? I think this is where the SP really earns its badge. The Öhlins rear shock and the KYB fork up front, well, on track, absolutely unshakable. That was the feeling I had. What about on the street? Well, so far, it feels surprisingly compliant. I can definitely feel the high-spec components ironing out the buttons better than the stock MT-09 did, but it's still stiffer. It feels stiffer to me than the Z900SE overall. I think the Kawasaki shower setup with that rear Öhlins might just be more street focused. It floats over broken pavement a little easier. Well, the MT-09SP feeds you everything, not harsh, but definitely connected. But I would say definitely feels more track bias for my feeling anyway. Now, what about that engine? Well, look, the CP3 triple is just magic. Even detuned a bit for emissions, it's really punchy and playful. You don't need to wring it out to have fun. You can hear and feel the torque everywhere, and I'm hoping you can hear some of that. I'd say that this is the Z900SE's Inline 4. The MT-09SP definitely feels more alive so far at sort of lower RPMs. But there's no denying that the Z still has that silky, predictable surge. It's easier to manage if you're newer to powerful bikes, for sure. Whereas the MT encourages sort of a more hooligan behavior, but in a really fun way. But it does demand a bit more finesse, especially for newer riders. I think that would be sort of the definite impression I got straight away here. So it's worth touching on ergonomics, sort of the rider triangle, comfort, the traffic maneuvering. I've done a little bit of traffic maneuvering on this so far, and I'd say that generally the rider position on the MT is slightly more aggressive. The bars are lower and a bit flatter than the Z's, and the foot pegs are slightly higher, so you feel more over the bike, I think, which works great sort of for attack mode. But after 45 minutes, you'll notice more pressure on your wrists compared to the upright, sort of more neutral position of the Z900SE. I'd say that said, both bikes are narrow and easy to lane filter on. You're not allowed to do that in Washington State, but I tend to do it anyway. The clutch feel and the low speed control, I think, are smoother though on the Kawasaki, especially in tighter U-turns or in some of the stop and go traffic that I've experienced. So what about braking? Well, when I think about sort of light to hard stops, the brakes are obviously solid. I mean, there's a Brembo master cylinder. It gives you bite and modulation that I think is confidence inspiring. It's definitely better than the Z900's Nissan master cylinders. Even though the Z900 has Brembo brakes, it has Nissan master cylinders. And so on the street, that means easier one finger braking and more feedback from the MT-09. But I don't think that's really something you need for commuting. But it's damn nice to have when you're pushing harder and you want to have that feel. I've actually been really impressed with the brakes on the MT-09. I think the brakes have a way better feel for me anyway. At the front end feel just feels more confidence inspiring for sure. So if you're going to be riding every of these bikes every day, and especially sort of in hotter climates, I find it's always useful to talk about fueling and heat, particularly when it comes to city traffic and slow speed. And I'd say the slow speed fueling on this new generation of MT-09 feels better to me than the older models, but it still has a little abruptness compared to that buttery smooth delivery on the Z. It just always feels kind of angry, not angry like it wants to, rip your head off or anything like a twin might, but it definitely feels a little bit angry. And as for engine heat, I think they both get warm in traffic, not V-twin warm, not Ducati L-twin warm, but the MT feels slightly cooler, just slightly. I think that's thanks to its more compact engine layout, and they have a revised radiator airflow now, and so there's really nothing unbearable on either though. So how about electronics? And when I talk about electronics, I really talk about traction control, quick shifter, rider aids. And I think this is where the Yamaha pulls ahead. Full 6-axis IMU, which the Kawasaki also has. Lean sensitive traction control, slide control, but it also has wheelie control, which the Kawasaki does not have. So, the quick shifter is bi-directional, smooth, it genuinely feels very useful, even on the street. Whereas the Z900, even the SE, has a more basic electronics package. I mean, it's got traction control, it's got riding modes, it's got a quick shifter, and it has a full access IMU. But the ride controls are not as refined or as customizable. So for tech-savvy riders who want to have a bunch of custom rides or custom modes, maybe they want different types of modes with different types of riding beyond what you get stock with the bike, I think the MT-09SP feels more like a next-gen machine. But I would say that, for riders who just want to ride without menu diving, the Z is more plug-and-play. So it's a pretty nice day here in Seattle. It's early fall, sun's out. I thought maybe it'd be worth doing a little parking lot test, which I try to do on these bikes. You might want to consider for everyday riding, sort of daily riding. And so let's pop into this little parking lot. Looks like there's some people here having lunch and chilling out. I'll try not to upset them too much. And just see, kind of how the bike feels. Imagine you're out shopping, doing your thing. I'm wearing a backpack right now. I'm looking for a park, looking around, full circle. How does it feel? It feels pretty, these are brand new tires, so I'm trying to be careful here, but definitely not feeling the traction control or anything kick in. And, most modern bikes today can handle this type of maneuvering really well. And if they can't, it's usually the human on top of the gyroscope that is causing the issues. And on this bike, I would say that it feels in this situation more flickable than the Z900. I think a lot of that is because it's lighter and it has kind of almost more of a motard riding position. I keep finding myself wanting to put my foot down and sort of hang it out around the parking lot, which I won't be doing, of course, because it's not my motorcycle, but you get the drift. So we'll pop around this roundabout here, head back out to the main road, and we'll find a place to stop and let's have a look at this bike a little bit closer and have a look at its design elements. And I'd love to see what you guys all think of it, and I'm going to give you some of my thoughts to add on to my thoughts that I sort of aired in the opening of this video. But before I do that, let's have a listen to that engine again, because it just sounds really great. So have a little listen. So let's take a look at how this thing looks. Now, I'll be honest, when I first saw the updated 09SP in the photos, I wasn't sold. It still kind of looks like a transformer halfway through morphing into a leaf blower, or maybe it's just the leaves around me that make it feel that way. But in person, I think it's different. The stance is aggressive. The lines are sharper than you would expect. And the finish on the SP, especially with that brushed aluminum swing arm and the subtle gold highlights, gives it kind of a premium vibe, I think. That you don't get from the pictures online. I think that this thing, it's always going to be, art is always in the eye of the beholder, right? One person's piece of art is someone else's not piece of art. Now, I do like the tank. I like how wide it is. It's really great for hanging off, gives you a lot of confidence. It's a really great place to be sitting. And I think the design of a tank definitely is much better for sort of that sort of hanging off and a bit more spirited riding. So I think from the side, it looks okay. Now, this front end, though, let's be honest, those headlights, for me, they just don't do it for me. It kind of has a face that only a mother could love. And yet, I think the more time I spend with it, the more it starts to make sense a little bit. The design feels like the bike, right? It's kind of raw, modern, it's unapologetic. But here's the real question, I think, is, and I want you to really think about this, is how do you want to feel when you park your bike, take your helmet off and look back at it? Does it matter to you at all if it, gives you that hell yeah, that's mine feeling? Because let's be real, this MT-09 and the Z900SE, they're so close in performance now that sometimes that emotional connection really is the deciding factor. Not the horsepower, not the weight, just how it makes you feel. So yeah, this one might not win any beauty contests, or maybe it will. It depends on the rider. But if it clicks with you and if it gets under your skin and that makes you grin every time you see it in the garage, then that's something that no spec sheet can measure in my experience. Okay, Angus, so how do I feel about it? Well, I think if you're a more aggressive street rider, maybe with a few track days under your belt and you want a bike that sort of delivers that sort of sharp response and, high-end suspension, next level electronics, I think the MT-09SP gives you that edge, and it's raw, it's engaging, it rewards you when you ride it the way it wants to be ridden. If you're someone who rides more casually, maybe commuting, weekend basis, or maybe you're just enjoying the torque without thinking about settings and fine tuning, you don't want to have to bother with any of that, then I think the Z900SE, it's going to feel more relaxed and more refined, still quick, still great handling, just easier to live with day to day. And for me, that easier to live with day to day moment is important because I have dedicated track bikes. So I have a couple of dedicated track bikes that I just go crazy on, push to the limit, my limits anyway on the track. And so when I'm on the street, I don't really need those things. And I don't need a bike that will sort of do double duty for track and street because I have dedicated track bikes. And so generally, I feel like neither one is better. I just think they speak to different kinds of riders. The MT-09SP is just this more bare knuckle boxer, with I suppose with a PhD in electronics. And the Z900SE, well, it's more of a velvet sledgehammer. It's smooth and powerful and surprisingly capable when pushed. But I'm going to cut to the chase a little bit. How I talked a little bit about how, there's something about motorcycling that, you can read off of spec sheets in the world. You can do those comparisons. It's not like, you're choosing a refrigerator or something, and well, what's the most cubic feet and, what's the price? It's different. It's a motorcycle. And despite the Yamaha MT-09SP, frankly speaking, probably being a better motorcycle, and the sort of when you look at the bare elements of the spec sheet, when you look at its capabilities, it's not that much better. Like, it's not so much better that I would want to buy it over the Z900SE. But the thing that I started talking about, and you hear me talk a lot, is how does it make you feel? And I'm sorry, I just can't get over the looks of the thing. There are little things like the exhaust, underbelly exhaust. Well, I like that it's underbelly because it means your heel's not catching on the exhaust and things, and you've got plenty of room, especially if you have bigger feet. But it's pretty ugly. There's something just kind of generic looking about it, even though they've tried to make it look and feel kind of Tron-like, hi-fi like. It just doesn't do it for me. Whereas the Kawasaki just looks so nice. It's just, the paintwork's great. It looks just super refined. It feels really good. And it is the bike that it doesn't feel that much worse. In fact, it doesn't feel worse than the MT-09. And so for me, the spec sheets don't speak to me in a way that they might speak to others, because when I look at it, I'm like, man, it just looks so nice. It's something that I'm going to get on and go, oh, it feels so good. It's going to make me feel good inside. And so I am going to buy this bike for a long-term test ride. Now, a long-term test ride is possible in the Pacific Northwest when we're getting into winter. Yeah, they are. And I'm going to ride it in the winter. And maybe we'll get some riding in when the leaves really start coming down, and I'll give you more thoughts on it. But that's the decision. I hope you enjoy these videos. If you don't, tell me. If there's stuff you'd like me to cover, tell me. Please like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Tell your friends about it. It's not my day job. I enjoy it. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.